Good evening. I'm Abby Phillip in Washington for a special edition of NewsNight. Let's get right to what America's talking about. Temperature check. The first elections in the second era of Donald Trump have Republicans celebrating and sweating. The party is going to keep 2 seats in their narrow House majority after special elections in Florida to replace Mike Waltz and Matt Gaetz. Democrats surprised analysts, though, by putting up a fight with both cash and energy in those districts that Trump won easily. But in the swing state of Wisconsin, a big blow to President Trump and Elon Musk, who spent plenty of time and tons of money campaigning for conservatives. The liberal judge, Susan Crawford, is projected to win the race to control the balance of power in that state's Supreme Court. So what are the takeaways tonight for both parties? Well, these electoral contests come as national Democrats are trying to show some signs of life, or at least a strategy to fight the Trump agenda. Senator Cory Booker tonight shattering the record for the longest speech on the floor of the Senate, 25 hours on his feet. That breaks Strom Thurmond's record from 1957 when he was fighting against the Civil Rights Act and the right for someone like Cory Booker to give that speech.
This is a moral moment, not left or right, right or wrong.
I think we're really at a point in America where things are happening that don't sit right with people of both sides of the aisle. There's so many things going on by this president who is trashing our allies, bullying Canada, who is in many ways just violating judges' orders, trampling on our Article 1 powers. So I just wanted to give a speech that said that this is not normal and we can't normalize it. And all of us have a responsibility to do something different, to take some risks, to be there for each other and to try to ignite a larger movement in our country.
Live at the table tonight, Bakari Sellers and Brad Todd, 2 lawmakers also with us, Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz, I'm going to start with you because you have run the Democratic Party before. You also are from the state of Florida. How do you take what happened tonight, which is the Democrats put up a bit of a fight, but they lost in Florida. Maybe Florida is not really on the table much for Democrats these days. But in Wisconsin, they won, and it could end up being by almost the same margin as a couple years ago when there was another big state Supreme Court race that really showed that there was energy there for the party. What do you take away?
Well, CD1 and CD6 in Florida are the bloodiest, reddest districts in our state and among the bloodiest, reddest in the country. Trump won CD1 by 37, CD6 by 30, and both Republican candidates tonight won those seats by less than half that. That means we won independence, and it is a rejection, very clearly, of the Republican Musk-Doge bag agenda, which cuts Medicaid, cuts Social Security, fires veterans, slashes their services. And in Wisconsin, a state that Trump won, it's very clear that no one likes the direction that Trump and Musk are taking this country.
Congresswoman Malliotakis, I thought you were shaking your head, but in Wisconsin, Elon Musk put it all on the floor, and he bet big on that state and lost big.
Well, the interesting thing is that nothing has actually changed. We still have the 2 Republican congressional seats in Florida, and the Wisconsin court is still liberal-leaning 4-3. Nothing actually flipped in either case. And so I don't think anyone's that really gained or lost anything tonight. I think things continue as they are. I would dispute my colleague's reference that nobody has cut Medicare, nobody has cut Medicaid, nobody has cut Social Security. In fact, we're looking to strengthen those programs. And I think that, look, Elon Musk, yes, I would say that perhaps there is a sentiment in the country that things are moving way too fast. I think that there's a lot of change that has been happening. I've been critical myself of some of the fast and furious changes and recommendations from Doge. I think the overall goal to find and eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse, eliminate unnecessary overhead and bureaucracy in our government is much needed, but we need to do it in a thoughtful, deliberate, and responsible manner. We've seen some unintended consequences, and it needs to slow down a bit, and perhaps that is one of the messages that is being sent tonight.
Yeah.
I think there's a big warning sign tonight for Republicans in Wisconsin, and it's about money. The Democratic candidate, Susan Crawford, raised $22 million. That is 10 times what Democrat candidates for this office raised just 4 years ago. She outraised the Republican 2-to-1 Republicans are not going to prevail in the midterms if we can't find ways to get money directly to candidates, not talking just big dollar super PACs, but big money to candidates. That's the worry I have as Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an. I was thinking a lot about the money, honestly, tonight, because I think a lot of people think, okay, the more money you have, you're going to have an advantage. And I don't know that that's really what we learned tonight. But to your point, I mean, Trump was able to benefit from Elon Musk and Republicans, $290 million, right, in the last election, all outside money for the most part. But there's something different when the candidate can actually utilize that money themselves and utilize it correctly. And I just think that we might be past the point where just sheer dollars are going to be determinative in these races. It's gotten kind of crazy.
No, first of all, I'm actually just kind of over here basking in glee with both of my Republican colleagues, one saying that these elections didn't change anything or matter, and you saying that the candidates' money was the biggest issue. I think both of those missed the mark hugely. These races mattered today because they set a tone. And yes, it was an outright rejection of Elon Musk trying to buy another race. And so money does matter. And we're seeing Elon Musk in Wisconsin giving away $1 million checks. People are simply saying that you cannot buy elections anymore in the United States of America. And to say that these races didn't matter because they didn't change anything, I think you saw a repudiation of the fact that Donald Trump got elected to seal the southern border and to reduce the price of eggs. Donald Trump has come to Washington, D.C., and flip things upside down in a way that people do not want. And so today you had, I forget the department because they shut a new department down every day, but you had employees, I think it was HHS today, I can't recall, who it was at HHS?
At the health department,
Yeah, at the health
CDC,
department,
and
standing
all
in
of those
line
others.
today, and they didn't know who was going to be hired and who wasn't. And so you can sit here and say that, oh, we're not going to cut Medicaid, we're not going to do this, but the people who are in charge of running those programs don't have jobs today. And so it's hard to effectuate and put those policies in place if Elon Musk is here running roughshod on the government.
Now, Bakari, let's be clear. The Department of Health and Human Services has 20 different communications officers. They have 17 different chief information officers. You surely have to admit that there's plenty of room to cut overhead waste, fraud, and abuse.
You know,
at that
but the
department
crazy part about it is I would prefer those two go in a room and do it and vote on it and do it transparently than Elon Musk sending about 13, 12-year-olds in there to do it.
We did that in Bill Clinton's
Bill
term.
Clinton did it. Yeah, he put a group together.
55 Democrats voted for it at that time. You couldn't find 5 who'd vote for it today because your party got so far
But
left.
Brad, I don't know. I don't
we're
know
not
if that's
doing
true,
that.
Brad, because it's not even come up. I mean,
Correct.
there is a Doge caucus in Congress that has Democrats on it, and they were willing to come to the table, but it was never brought to.
A few things that need to be made
All right,
clear
I want
here.
to also respond, but go ahead.
A few things need to be made clear. This was not the firing of comms directors, Brad. They closed the office that oversees IVF, in vitro fertilization research. They closed the office today in the CDC that focuses on HIV. They closed vaccine offices. They have cut hundreds of billions of dollars in genetic research and biomedical research. As fellow cancer survivors, I hope you care about that. But it is absolutely critical that we make sure people understand that they are making deep cuts in substantive programs that make a difference in people's lives. And respectfully, quite a lot changed today because for the first time in my state, these two districts, Matt Gaetz in 2018 in Trump's first term won CD1 with 67% of the vote. I mean, this is a seat.
But he never really faced a real challenger from the Democrats. And I will say that, talking about buying elections, it was 10-1 that the Democrats outspent the Republicans. And yes, Democrats are obviously more.
In the Florida races.
In the Florida races. It's
grassroots
10-1.
money.
So talk about buying an election. But you said that President
Grassroots
Trump
money.
was elected to secure the border. He was elected to lower the price of eggs. Guess what? Both of those things have happened. Mortgage rates have also come down. Oil prices have come down.
If you think
I don't know where you're going.
The last thing I just want to.
If you think the kitchen table issues today, if you think that people are sitting at home today and saying that their prices have gone down today, then you need to go outside and have these town hall
I'm
meetings,
simply
'cause that's
saying
not
that
case.
the egg prices have come down,
We
the
are
oil
talking
prices
about the
have
fact
come down,
that Waffle House
mortgage
still-
rates have come down.
Waffle House still has a 50-cent surcharge
All
on
right.
eggs,
I
okay?
went shopping the other day. And
I think the other
eggs
thing
were
that's really
$8.
important to point out is the referendum in Wisconsin. The voter ID referendum, which was President
by
Trump's
25 points.
What a huge priority for President Trump. Voter IDs. and it passed by double digits, and that, I think, was also a very big win. So where nothing else changed, because we still keep those congressional seats, you guys keep the left-leaning court in Wisconsin, that was a big thing for Republicans.
Can we just do one thing about the way that we characterize the Supreme Court Justice-elect? Because we keep calling her liberal, I've seen that all day, and you call her left-leaning, and I've seen that all day. But the way she ran her campaign is, I'm going to be someone who applies the rule of law as it should be applied justly. And one of the things that I hate is the fact that we have these partisan judges anyway. But her opponent ran to Fox News to campaign every single day. That's not something she did. She did not run from a left-wing.
Okay. Let me play, actually, because I just think it's helpful for people to hear some of the arguments. Let's play the abortion ads from these two candidates so people can hear it.
He wants to take us back to the 1849 law
that bans abortion for rape and the health of the mother.
The people of Wisconsin, through referendum or their elected representatives, should decide the question of abortion.
Okay, so I take the political point that you're making, but I also think the truth is these candidates, I don't know why they don't have R's and D's next to their names, but they should, because everybody understands what's going on. This is not a nonpartisan situation, because they're clearly in camps here. And it did matter. Abortion mattered. Elon Musk and Trump mattered. All of those things definitely weighed in.
You know what else
this
mattered?
race.
What else matters? Turnout patterns. Democrats today are the party of the hyper-educated and the elites and the wealthy. They turn out more in small turnout elections. It's just a fact that Republicans are a working-class party now. We need massive turnout to win. It flips political conventional wisdom on its head, but that's why
the turnout was high tonight.
We're gonna.
In Wisconsin. But I know what you're saying.
Wisconsin
right?
turnout is typically better than most places, right? But it still was a spring election. It's still not presidential level turnout. Democrats won this one maybe 55-45. They won the last one 55-45. They won the one before that 55-45. What you saw here was a pattern, and Republicans have got to figure out a way to win when turnout is low. Right now, that's when Democrats win.
When turnout of Trump voters, though, is low, which is a different thing, because the low propensity Trump voters, who are people who only pay attention when Donald Trump's name is on the ballot, are perhaps the ones who decided to stay home tonight.
4 months ago, Donald Trump won Wisconsin, because voters went to the polls and they said, we believe you. We think you want to actually lower prices and make my kitchen table costs lower. He hasn't done that. In fact, he's actually gone after the issues that matter to them the most, that cause deep pain. If you're talking about the blueprint that Republicans jammed through the House and the Senate, that absolutely sets up a vote to cut hundreds of billions of dollars in Medicaid. Nicole, you can deny it all you want,
but it's not true. It's simply not true.
It is 100%
You're not going to
that budget blueprint asked for $830 billion in cuts to Medicaid.
And that's the thing.
And that's the direction that's been given to the committee that they are supposed to produce in their reconciliation
They are motivating people by...
can you answer that, though?
I will answer that.
Because the bill that Republicans are passing, it does call for that. And there's not a lot of evidence that even if you describe it as waste, fraud, and abuse, that amount of waste, fraud, and abuse actually exists. You have to get into the programs in order to get to those numbers.
Just utilizing government reports. It's $500 billion in waste, fraud, and abuse over 10 years. We're looking at $800 billion, and that's not including everything else within the energy and commerce space.
Over a period of what time?
But you can't go out. You're
instilling.
instilling.
That's $50 billion a year. That doesn't even. That math, as the kids say, that math's not math.
No. So the budget is over 10 years, right? So $500 billion just in Medicaid waste, fraud, and abuse. That's not. If you were to include Medicare, by the way, it would be $1 trillion. We're not even touching that. So what I'm saying is,
how much is the entire program?
No, what I'm trying to say is, if from $880 billion, you're talking about energy and commerce. It's much more than just healthcare, right? You're talking about all sorts of different mandates, regulations that can be reversed. The thing is, to go out and say that we're cutting things when we haven't even mentioned the word in the budget resolution, it's just disingenuous.
I do think, though,
at least
that
wait until the legislative.
When it comes to transparency, though, shouldn't you, as lawmakers, if you're saying, okay, this is not a cut, say what it is then, exactly what it is, where it's going to come from, where you're going to find
we're not even
this
at that
money.
step
That's
yet.
what happens in the next phase.
Yeah, we're not even at that step yet. But how can you go out there and say that we're cutting these programs when they're not even mentioned by name in the budget resolution? It's so disingenuous.
Because
what the Democrats have done is instilled fear in people. They are fear-mongering. And you know what the worst thing is? They're scaring senior citizens. They're scaring our most vulnerable. They're scaring people with disabilities to score political points. That is so ridiculous
and to take attention away from the fact they're going to raise taxes.
Just wait until the language comes out, then you could be critical of what we decide to do.
What is really happening right now is that Donald Trump is cutting hundreds of billions of dollars out of HHS for biomedical research. He is cutting VA services. He's firing VA employees who are providing direct services to our nation's veterans. And their budget blueprint, according to economic experts, say that you cannot come up with $880 billion in cuts in the Energy and Commerce Committee without cutting into Medicaid. There isn't anyone.
They also said the Tax Cut and Jobs Act was going to actually. They were $1.5 trillion off with the Tax Cut and Jobs Act.
There's no question
in
that
revenue.
The bill they produce will have Medicaid cuts, and they're going to all walk off the plank.
Well, I mean, if you're protecting fraudsters, this is the thing.
Okay, this is not waste, fraud, and abuse.
No.
It's not waste,
if you
fraud,
are
and abuse.
a fraudster, then you should be concerned about that. But if you are we are not cutting Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security for traditional recipients. Now, if you are somebody who should not be on the program, if you're a fraudster, then yes, maybe you should.
Traditional recipients. It's not mathematically possible.
Yeah, we do have to let this go.
This is why Wisconsin flipped it.
Let it go.
One of the reasons,
didn't flip. Democrats kept it.
In the long run, we will win this fight in the next election because people will see that they have not lost their coverage, and we will win this fight, and they will be proven to be liars.
I just want to explain to people at home that one of the reasons that it's difficult to sort out where we really are on this issue is that the question of how much waste, fraud, and abuse, it's not clear that you can get to the numbers that you're talking about. Now, maybe you can. Maybe we will look back on this in 2 years and suddenly, magically, we will find that it's all waste, fraud, and abuse. But the government reports that you're citing don't add up to those numbers. So the question is, where's the rest of it going to come from? And we'll find out. Like you said, we might look back and you might be right, or the Congresswoman might be right. Coming up next, the clock is close to striking midnight, which means it is the day that many Americans and the markets are dreading, Donald Trump's Liberation Day. So what exactly should we expect from that? And what aren't they still telling us about what is happening tomorrow? Also, the White House's reaction to the administration mistakenly deporting a man to El Salvador's prison. Oops, and we'll see. We'll debate that.